on which the Fields Institute operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Furthermore, the Fields Institute is committed to providing an atmosphere that encourages the free expression and exchange of ideas in a harassment-free, friendly, and respectful environment. The Fields Institute will not tolerate, condone, or ignore harassment and/or discrimination of any staff, members, or participants in this event. Anyone engaging in such behavior will be removed from the event immediately. And with that said, let's proceed. So today we're going to have a special workshop, and this is inspired by our Next Generation group. So we have a fantastic, vibrant, interesting collection of early career scholars that are affiliated with the Mathematics for Public Health program. And something that I've been conscious of is that our early career scholars have really missed out over the last couple of years because of the pandemic. And there's been many meetings and conferences and seminars that would have been held in person that have been held virtually and online. And the other side to that is actually, even as things begin to open up, more and more, we're finding that this virtual space is actually a very convenient and cost-effective way to build these international and national collaborations. So as much as you may not enjoy the virtual environment, it's really here to stay. And as much as we miss having coffee together and actually being able to flesh things out in person, this is an incredibly valuable space and a very inclusive space. It means that people who are remote can join. It means people with mobility issues can join. And it means people from across Canada and other countries can come and join in these special sessions. So the best thing for us going forward is to make the most of this virtual environment, that we make the most of the meetings that we come to, and that we make the most of our presence on the internet. So the program we're going to go through today is we have two guests, and we have our Deputy Director, Deirdre, as well as our sort of guinea pig. So I'm just going to introduce you to Leigh Tynan. Leigh Tynan is the founder and CEO of Tynan Studio. It's a media production company based in Toronto with clients in not-for-profit, healthcare, and consumer product goods. Leigh's worked with everyone from startup founders to the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, creating personal branding images. Leigh was the creative director behind the fastest growing food startup in Canadian history, which is called Love Good Fats, and is a keto snack brand. Is amazing, and it's she's managed the brand style and voice, as well as the personal brand of the founder and CEO, Susie York. So Leigh is going to take us, show us how we can use our just your cell phone to get a great picture that you can use for your branding, and also how to light yourself for these types of events. And then I'm going to go through Deirdre's online profile, and we're going to have a look at Deirdre I will introduce her fully if you don't know her already, but she's here and she's our deputy director, and she is even more impressive in person than she is online. So it'll be really good to look at what she has, and I'm sure Deirdre will gain some ideas as well about how to make her online presence even more reflective of how great she is as a person and as an academic. And then finally, we're going to welcome. Oh, yes, sorry, Deirdre.
I just wanted to say the even more, let's not overdo it. Probably my online presence is very bad.
Enjoy. I love working with Deirdre. She's great to work with, and she's a very impressive person to work with. So, but that can be hard to tell from someone's online profile. So, and maybe difficult to toot one's own horn. But anyway, I can do it because it's Deirdre, or Professor Haskell. And we're also going to have Pamela Britton join us, and she is she does outreach for Fields, and she's going to help walk you through some of the important points to make when you're presenting. So I'm going to start now by handing over to Leigh Tynan. Thank you so much for joining us, and she's going to show you how to use your mobile phone to your best advantage.
Amazing. Well, it's nice to meet you all. I'm just going to get my screen sharing set up here while can everybody see? Get going here. My screen. Yes. Maybe a thumb. Yes. Okay. Awesome. I thought this was a pretty cool idea when Sarah came and asked me to come and talk to you guys. It's definitely a different world that we live in now, from, you know, how we did things before. And it's kind of interesting for me to think about it in terms of application as like a PhD student or someone coming out of graduate school looking for work, or career opportunities. I think, I mean, I've never worked with a group of mathematicians before, but I do have a daughter who's in grade 5, who's in Spirit of Math. So we do a lot of math in our house, but I think it's probably a little bit simpler than the math that that you folks all do. But why I think this is super important, I'm just going to walk you through some examples of some people that I've worked with. I think the big thing to have come across here is that I think sometimes when we think about having pictures taken of ourselves and going to some effort, it feels like a little frivolous and silly. And maybe if you're a hardcore mathematician, that doesn't seem like, you know, your jam. But really, the face that you put out to the world, I think, you know, you have to think about the career you want and where you want to be in the universe, and dress for it and put that face forward. So in this world, we're no longer sort of dressing for it in person, we're dressing for it online. And so, you know, you could all have track pants on the bottom or pajamas and fuzzy slippers, but I think the face that you're putting out to the world, which is right now really kind of your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile. I think in academics, those are sort of the two main spaces. If you have a website page that posts about the work that you do, you really want to make sure that that is sort of the best representation of you. Because really, if you don't sort of show that off, if you're always online and you just have your name on the screen, which I did notice quite a few people have today. It's great to know your name, but beyond your name, you know, having a face to go with the name and a great picture of you is pretty important. So, you know, I was kind of thinking, what does it mean in terms of your world and where you live and why it's important to put your best face forward? Just out of the gate, what do you think this means for the people who are here today? Like, what does it mean to you in terms of what are you trying to achieve at this place in your career? People can just speak up and share. Anyone?
Go on, throw her a bone. Someone must have something.
Yeah. Like, I guess, I mean, I think from what Sarah told me, I believe that your kind of early career, so you're, you know, potentially looking for positions with universities, research projects, grants. I don't know, that's, maybe I'm making that up, but that's what I'm imagining. Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just necessarily like places within kind of academic research institutions. Some people on the line may be interested in jobs for, say, public health agencies. There are a few industries, say in pharmaceuticals, particularly, and some other organizations which do have space for epidemiological modelers. So those, it's kind of does tend to be like linked to academia, but not necessarily. Some of them are more civil servant scientists. Some of them are more private sector scientists, if you see what I mean.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's helpful. So I guess the point is that it actually, I think in the more private sector, there's a much stronger expectation to have a proper LinkedIn photo. It seems like maybe it's more forgiving in academia to not, but I think, I guess the point is, yeah, if you're trying to bridge the gap and potentially work in both areas, it's super important to have a great picture. So
Wade has his hand up, so let's just Wade, do you want to just unmute and tell us, make your position?
Yeah, I was just going to answer the question that, like, I've got several years left in my degree, so I'm not really looking for work right now, and but I'd like to make connections for, you know, possible career opportunities, you know, 3 years down the road or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to be thinking about always kind of building your pipeline in your community, right? So regardless of what your sort of career is, I mean, for me, it's obviously very different than for you guys, but you always need to be thinking about who is your network. And you may not exactly be looking for a job right now, but maybe you're looking for some grant opportunities or some research partnerships. I think it's always important to be networking and building your network, because at the time when you need the connections is not the time to be starting to build it, right? So yeah, so these are kind of all just things that I was thinking about in terms of where you're at and what you want to, why it's important to put your best face forward. The other thing to think about is like the profiles of the people that you look up to, the careers that you sort of think are inspiring and aspirational. What do those people's profiles look like? And it's funny because sometimes they're actually not great and sometimes they're great. And I've had an interesting experience because I've done photography for so long where I've seen there's people that I took their photos like 10, 15 years ago and they're still their LinkedIn pictures, right? They invested in a good photo and they're still using it. And I'd say as long as you still look at, like it mostly looks like you, I think it's absolutely fine, right? If it looks like you and it was taken 5 years ago, but it's a great picture, then keep using it, right? And that's where the investment makes it worthwhile. What I wanted to share with you guys was a story about this woman that I've worked with at Love Good Fats, which Sarah referenced at the beginning when she introduced me. So this is Susie York. She's now just she's the founder and the board member now, but she was the CEO of Canada's fastest growing food startup in history. I met her before she had bars. Susie, her background is she worked in consumer product goods for years in marketing, but she's actually an engineer by education. She's a very analytical thinker. She is not into fashion. She is not into having her picture taken. But and I actually couldn't find the original photo on the website from when I met Susie because she had a very basic website up with a picture of her that was quite poorly lit. It was not a very flattering photo, but this is Susie. And so she's an 11-time Ironman. She, like I said, she was an engineer, so she didn't put a focus on what she looked like. She's not a person who's taking selfies. She's kind of, most of the time, if you see her, she's probably in track pants and a hoodie if she had her choice. But why this mattered for Susie was that she knew, because she came from a marketing background, that she had to put her best face forward in terms of achieving what she wanted in her career, which was she needed people to give her funding to support her company. So like a large part of it was investors, but also was building a brand around this keto friendly snack bar, being a health person. And so when I met her, she knew that even though she had a small budget to begin with, she needed to invest in making sure she had a great online presence. So I met her in 2017. I worked with her for 4 years. The picture on the right is the photo that she still uses on LinkedIn. Now, obviously, you guys don't need to go to this extent, right? This was from a commercial shoot we did, but she's had hair and makeup done. She's in a prop kitchen. The point is, though, that this one photo is the picture she used for everything. And it's still her LinkedIn photo. And it took her, a good image. She used it on LinkedIn, on Instagram, everywhere, helped her achieve that. And the other thing to think about with this was, so Susie would go to trade shows, like food trade shows. And after I started working with her, we actually, I took her shopping. I got her these new glasses. I dressed her so that when she went to trade shows, and this is something you have to think about, is if you do get a chance to be somewhere in person, it is important, when you walk in somewhere and you're together and you've got a look that's obviously it's your style, but that you're put together and you've put some thought and effort into it. It conveys a confidence. And so for her investors, when she showed up at a trade show after we had given her this kind of freshen up, the investors said to her, the people who were the early investors who knew they needed more investors and they wanted Walmart to list her bars and Loblaws to list her bars and Whole Foods, they said, this is how we need you to look. When you're coming to speak, this is you look like the confident CEO of this incredibly successful startup. And so, she ended up winning the Report on Business Entrepreneur of the Year last year. It's a pretty impressive story. So that's why I wanted to give that as an example. Then I just wanted to walk through, you can find lots of these examples online, but I thought this was really telling because it shows these are all images of the same person and it's just two versions of a picture. So if you look at them all in terms of what would work well for a LinkedIn picture, it's looking at the camera, I know some people aren't big into smiling, but I do think a smile is, I think being subtle is for, you know, Calvin Klein commercials. I do think putting your personality out there when it's your, you know, if you're not a smiley person, you don't want to smile with teeth, that's okay. But I do think having a warm, approachable image. And then as you can see from these examples, part of it is just when you're making your LinkedIn picture or your Twitter photo, like just make sure it's properly cropped. The top right example is perfect, right? It's like, it's just so much more effective when it's close up. And in all the, actually, I would say that the bottom left guy here, his better version is still, I think he could be better lit of all the 4 examples, but those kind of give you a good reference point to like what you should be thinking about in terms of a picture to choose. Because as you can see, all these people are obviously very happy, smiley, photogenic people, but a better picture definitely, you know, shows them off a lot better. It's when you, if you were to meet the person at a conference, if I saw this woman in the, she looks like she's got a riding hat on and a horse, I might not actually, she's, you know, there's so much going on in that picture, I might not actually know her if I met her in person. But the picture on the right of her is much more recognizable. So these are just examples of photos that I've taken of people over the years. Obviously, you know, in a lot of these cases, people have had hair and makeup done, but things to think about in terms of your own personal brand and like what you want to put out to the world. So the woman in the top left works in healthcare. So that image was taken in a hospital. She's a hospital executive. She would actually be an excellent example of someone who, as long as I have known her, Allison has always dressed for the job she wanted, not the job she had, which I think is also important. You meet people and in a group of people, in a room full of people, Allison is always, you know, business, she's dressed in a business suit, which I mean, she now is a very senior executive, but she wasn't when I first met her. And then some of these other ones, it can be subtle. I mean, I think as mathematicians, you don't necessarily have a brand color, but the woman on the bottom left has a company that makes waxing. She's also a startup CEO, and the brand color is purple. So she's wearing a purple shirt. The woman in the middle photo on the bottom is the head of marketing at TD Bank. So the green blazer is kind of like a nod to that. The gentleman on the top was the country manager for IKEA in Canada. So we did a photo of him with the flat pack boxes in the background. And again, you can get a little bit creative with your pictures, even if you're taking them yourself, in terms of what you might have behind you or what colors you might wear. And then the woman on the right is, she does personal coaching and her business is called the Abundance Academy. And she has a thing with butterflies. So the reference of the background and the shirt and all that kind of was brought into that. Yeah, so those are just kind of some examples I wanted to show of things you could think about if you wanted to go beyond just taking a basic, you know, sort of selfie, which we're going to talk about. So this was something I wanted to share. Just to think about, because we're going to just talk about the basics of how to set up your phone and where to be standing in relation to the window and stuff. But this will just give you an example, and I'll pause it before I start. I'm just going to let it play for like 30 seconds of, can you see this screen? Is this still sharing? It is, okay. Of a video of it's just showing how light moves on this woman's face. And you can really see how much lighting affects what your face looks like. Just watch it for a little bit here. There we go. I think that kind of makes the point. Just that there's definitely angles where your face looks better. Everybody's face looks better with light coming from certain angles. And we're going to talk about that next. So the main things to think about. Has anyone, I guess this seems like a silly question, but people all have smartphones. Yes. Maybe iPhones with the portrait setting, maybe. Okay, so we're just going to run through. This is just Malika, who works with me. She just made this short video to show you, and then we'll just go through step by step the kind of the things that we're doing here with the lighting, but it just shows how simple this is. Yeah, so you can see, we're going to just walk through the steps. It's going to be very simple. Okay, so to start off with, natural light, like if given the choice, natural light is what I would always pick, even with the most expensive lighting kits in the world. You always pick natural light over lighting. And the other thing I realized I didn't differentiate here is you want a natural light source, but not direct sunlight. So that is pretty important because you don't want to be squinting, right? So if you see that picture in the video where Malika's holding up the phone, she's opened the window, but it's not direct sunlight on her face. It's a nice front light, but it's not like blasting rays of sunshine, right? It's sort of indirect. You also always want to be facing towards the light. Sometimes people like to try side lighting. I would say in the case of doing this with an iPhone, it's not going to be super flattering. You just always want nice, even front light coming down your face like this. Also keeping in mind that higher light, like not overhead, but sort of on an angle like this from your face, which is where you saw Malika was holding the phone kind of like, oh, it's blurring, but she was holding the phone kind of up above her a little bit. Gives a nice angle and nice light. You're going to face the source of light. And then the other thing you can try, right, is when you're holding the phone or even better, get someone else to hold it. They're holding it a little bit, like not low. They're holding a little higher or you're holding a little higher. And you can also just try like changing your body around, right? Like it doesn't have to be a head on. Passport photos are the only thing in the world where you'd want to be shot head and shoulders straight on. It's much more flattering. If I was taking a professional portrait of someone, I would never have them stand straight on. I would always have them stand on an angle and then turn their head, because it just creates a more dynamic line in your shoulder and it creates the plane of focus for your face. So you can just do that, right? You can just do that by holding the phone and just trying some different things, and also bringing your chin down a little bit, not too much, but photography is all about planes. So for math people, I think that's like, you want your face and the plane of the camera to be on the same lines. And everything else then, especially if you use the portrait mode on an iPhone, everything else will get kind of soft, which looks quite beautiful. And then think about your background. I mean, in the example that we made there of that little video, we just stuck up a piece of Bristol board, but you could put like a colored sheet or a colored piece of Bristol board, or if the Fields Institute is green and you want to be connected to it, you could have a white background with a green shirt, or a green background and a black shirt or something, right? You can kind of think about that. And also just think about the background being kind of simple. And not having too much going on. If you think about that woman who was hugging the horse, I think that's probably great for Instagram and personal, maybe for Facebook, but for work photos, it really should just be about you and not whatever's happening behind you. Okay, so some cheap and cheerful tricks in terms of photos. So I would definitely say it is worthwhile to get your hair done beforehand. Whether you're taking the picture yourself or someone else is taking it for you. There's an amazing video I saw years ago, Annie Leibovitz, who's a very famous portrait photographer, probably one of the most famous. They show the prep and the behind the scenes of doing a cover photo for Vogue. And the hair and makeup and the prep takes maybe 2 hours. and she probably spends maybe 5 minutes taking the picture. So that's something to keep in mind, right? Is like making an effort to make sure that your hair has been cut, that you've got on a fresh looking shirt. The number of times I've showed up to do professional photos of people where they say, oh, you can just Photoshop the wrinkles or Photoshop the stains. Just have a clean shirt, have a crisp shirt that hasn't been washed. Even if, you know, your favorite black shirt, it's been washed 50 times, like just get a new one. And the other thing is too, if you are doing a photo shoot, sometimes like people will buy clothes and leave the tags on and then just return them afterwards. We do that all the time here. Because, you know, sometimes the clothes that you wear for a picture maybe aren't the things you'd wear every day. Yeah, using window light and a smartphone. Thinking about the backdrop. So again, can be a sheet or a piece of Bristol board taped to the wall, but just something that gives you a simple, clean background. The other thing you can do is you can also, cameras have self-timers. So you can just do a self-timer and try, you know, if you wanted to try something with your arms crossed or your hands on your hip or a bit of like angles, but just keeping in mind that if the only spot you can rest the phone is like on the chair way below you, that you got to think about how to make it flattering so you don't look like you've been shot up. So sometimes if you rest your phone like on a table, but you were to like lean down a little bit, it could work. I would say though, ideally, if you're going to do the self timer, some people have like those, you can get little stands for phones or you can rest them on some books or something, but that's also something to consider is if you don't have anybody else who'd come and take the picture for you. Then the other thing I wanted to touch on for meetings. So in addition to having a great picture of yourself, which should be all your different profile photos and stuff. If you're in a meeting and you have your camera turned on, the best lights, these IKEA lights, it's linked in the bottom here. It's this $20 desk lamp. We have them here. I have 2 of them just on either side of my laptop here. And that is definitely something, being in a presentation where you've got the pot lights over your head and you have these like dark circles, or the light in the room is like a neon lights and they're kind of green looking. I think it just, you know, having some, it'll cost you $40 for 2 $19.99 lights. And they're also on like they're bendy, right? So if your laptop is at a different height or whatever, you can always kind of rearrange them. I'm in the storage closet at my studio, which is not well lit. And I forever would be on calls and I'd be like trying to find a way that I didn't look like I had only slept an hour. And for $40 now I have these lights and I always look perfectly lit. So I think that's a good cheap trick. So then the other thing I wanted to touch on as we get to the end here is just to think about which pictures you're using where. The rule for branding, I know sometimes people think, well, I could use a different picture for LinkedIn and one for Twitter. If your brand, if you're thinking about the sort of face you're putting out to the world, as much as possible, the stream that is work or anything connected to your career, you should use the same picture with the same crop everywhere. Your personal stuff, you know, I think we have to think about our virtual world as like, there is a difference. Something else to think about with that is your personal stuff, depending on what you're putting out in your personal life, which I think maybe Sarah's going to touch on in a little bit, but really think about, for example, my brother is a physician in Australia. His personal Instagram feed does not have his full name. His LinkedIn feed is completely separate because his personal life, he doesn't want to share. The things he's sharing in his personal life are not connected to his work life. And so that's something else to think about. But definitely, if say for you, if Facebook is connected to work because you're posting articles about your research, or you have a Facebook group you're connected to that is related to a particular program you're connected to, I think TikTok, as far as I know for now, is mostly personal. But also if you were a mathematician and you were doing videos for lay people on public health and mathematical modeling or something, and it's somehow connected to work, then you'd maybe want to use the same profile photo. But just think about your sort of ecosystem and where you're putting images. But definitely in terms of your branding, if it's connected to work and you want it to be related, you would use the same image for everywhere.
We have a question from Idris here. He's asking about about crossing arms in a picture. He said he's asking, is it a negative meaning to have your arms crossed, or is it better to be open?
Well, you know, that's a great question. So it's funny. I personally am not I feel like it's sort of the classic businessman cover where their arms are crossed and you're shooting up a little bit. But sometimes, so depending on the usage, but I would say if it's typically not as approachable to have your arms crossed, but if you think about it, say you are a woman and maybe you want to have, or a person who wants to have more presence and you want to come across, like, think about it. It's like, I would be intentional about it. Sometimes arms crossed is good because it conveys a level of seriousness. And in the right context, I think it can convey confidence and strength. But I think you have to think about how you're using it. I would say for LinkedIn photos, and a lot of the times for Zoom calls and stuff, the picture you're going to use is actually going to be quite close. Because otherwise the screen sizes are so small that you almost can't see the person. So arms crossed maybe wouldn't matter as much there, but if you can see them, like I think in my bio photo, my arms might be crossed, but I think the expression, like if you're smiling, it can, I guess the thing is be intentional about it is what I would say. Yeah. Any other questions? Is everybody ready to go and take their fabulous selfies?
I think they've already started. I was enjoying watching Deirdre have a go. So yeah, Martin, you have a question.
Yeah, I've got one from before in terms of just lighting. I did so like in terms of advice, in terms of lighting in say a flat or whatever else, say it was a midday on a sunny day, but a north-facing window as opposed to a south-facing window, so you don't get the sun in the eyes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I would say like, so with lighting, the best time of day to take a picture as we come into the best month of the year for light. I mean, the sort of magic hour lighting in the morning, and in the evening, when you're in like May and June, I mean, you could take a photo of a piece of gum on the sidewalk and it would look spectacular, right? Like that early morning and end of day light is gorgeous. It is a lot harder to take a great picture in the middle of the day, especially as we come into like the high sun times of the year. But indirect sunlight, so for example, if you had a north-facing window and there's a bit of light bouncing off like a white wall of a building across the street or something, that can be pretty fabulous. I think you just want to think about it as like, yeah, not so anything that makes you blink is going to be too much, but a north-facing window on a sunny day is great. Okay, great. Well, I think that was fantastic, Leigh. I'm going to go and buy those lights. Usually I'm quite fortunate because I work from my kitchen, which means that I have this great light from, it will be a south-facing window, so I get south lights. I'm usually pretty well lit. However, the disadvantage, which some of you may have come across, is that when you share your workspace with everyone in your family and they're cooking meals and the dog starts barking at the delivery person, it all gets a bit chaotic. But that is the world we live in. So I think as long as you tell people what your situation is, I do think that, so I'm trying to lower Martin's hand, if that's okay. Yeah, you can stop sharing screen, that's great. So I think it's, if you are working from home, you can still look professional. So behind me is my kitchen. I'll show you, and probably a couple of grubby pots. So I'll show you what it looks like here. There you go, there's my kitchen, not too bad, it's been worse. I quite like using this background for Mathematics for Public Health because it showcases our research, and I think that's a great thing to do. If you're part of a program and you'd like to be identified with it, use it, snatch their branding off the internet. You can probably just do it with a screenshot and you can upload it onto Zoom or Teams or whatever is going to allow you to put up your virtual background. I'd also say, since we're such a small group, what would be nice is, let's pretend that I may hire one of you in this most amazing 10-year position. You're going to get paid like $500,000. So you should probably have your camera on.
so I can see you and everyone else in the meeting can see me, or we could just have people here who you might want to connect with in the future. So I would recommend for these meetings where you might have a chance to put your camera on. And if you feel you can't put your camera on, then be prepared for the next time you do come online, that you feel that you can. So do all those things, maybe tidy up your back or have a blur so they can't see, or have a nice picture. And again, when I'm not speaking, and I'm maybe just quickly nipping to somewhere else to go and get myself a cup of coffee. When I do stop video, there's a professional picture of me. And just as Leigh pointed out, that's the one that I use for all of my professional things. So when I was asked, if I'm asked for a headshot, this is the one I use, and I got this one for free. I was saying at another thing we were at, I got this one for free at a women's networking conference, but I had to download a dating app to get it. So it seemed worth it, but I got a nice sort of pro looking shot. So, and I also sat with my kids going through the dating profile and almost got myself a date by mistake and then had to like delete it. So it was all very awkward, but fortunately didn't get a date, but I did get the free picture. So that was good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to go through, in fact, we'll just spotlight before we do. So some of you will know Deirdre. She is our deputy director. Let's see if I can spotlight you. Yeah, there we go. This is Deirdre. This is our deputy director at Fields. And you started in 2020 or 2019, Deirdre?
It's hard to remember. 2020, right? Just after the epidemic started.
Okay, so yeah, we started at the same time, I remember. And Deirdre is also professor of mathematics at McMaster. So let me just have a quick so Deirdre got her PhD in 1990 and impressively got her chair as a professor at McMaster in, what year were you? Let me just see where your program is. I've got you on here. Let's see. So you moved to McMaster in 2000 and you were promoted to full professor in 2000. So it's a really great 10-year.
No, that's not quite. No. I was made associate professor.
Associate
in 2000. Yes.
Fantastic.
Full professor came 6 years later.
6 years. Oh, amazing. Okay, so a full professor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through Deirdre's online profile and all the places where people are going to find Deirdre, and you will. We'll try not to be too critical because I don't want people, but what we want you to do is do some homework. So after this session, we do ask that everyone who's here go, and if you don't have a professional photo, professional being as Leigh showed us, you don't have to go and see a professional photographer, but get a good shot. And I'm going to take you through all these different spaces and you can see which ones you have, and then we will, let's see where we are. It's on this one. Let's see if we can share now. Okay, share. Hopefully I'm on the right page. Yeah, here we go. So can you all see this page? So I'm going to take you to the first one. Now this is if you Google Deirdre Haskell, this is what you will find. This is the one that's at the top, and this is Deirdre's professional page, McMaster page. Now, the first thing you'll notice is you can actually see Deirdre from this picture. It looks like she's somewhere super cool, but if I saw her anywhere else, I wouldn't know this was Deirdre. So I would say, in my lay person's recommendation, that Deirdre might want to change that profile picture. And in fact, as we go through her different profiles, we'll find spectacular and very nice pictures of her. This actually looks quite clunky, and I would say that the format is something I would have expected from the 1990s. So I would say McMaster could probably, revamp their profiles for their professors. And maybe that's something Deirdre might just want to politely suggest, is that they have maybe a slightly more sophisticated. I imagine this might be good I'm not really sure what, maybe this is good. Maybe this is more accessible or something, but this is probably not the best way to showcase Deirdre. But this is the first one that we're going to find. So as we go on, Deirdre is more than just a mathematician. She's, of course, she's the deputy director of Fields, and she's got lots of skills around organizing conferences and running programs. She's a force of nature at Fields. If you need to get something done and done well, Deirdre is usually behind it. So, it's good to not just show, it does say Fields Institute here, but it would be great to have a bit about what Deirdre does as a deputy director there, because it's a lot more, it's not an honorary position. This is an earned and hard worked position. So we can, and here, if I want to find publications, I'm not seeing them. Anyway, this is not this is not the best place for you, Deirdre. I think we can see if we can bump up something more impressive for you. Okay, so LinkedIn. Now, often when you Google your name, you will come to your LinkedIn page. Deirdre, I would like to know where your profile picture is. And again, this is there's not much in here. So you need to remember that your LinkedIn profile is basically your CV. And that's how you should run it. It's not a social networking platform. So don't use it to make friends or to find dates. And certainly I wouldn't use it to share things on causes. I think if you're taking a position on something which in your discipline is important, then for all means, if it's something around diversity, equity, and inclusion, or there's an important cause, or maybe you are supporting a strike in your faculty or something, and you feel it's something you really want to talk about, then maybe put it on your LinkedIn, but maybe don't, because future employers are going to look there. So being sensitive to that, think of it as your dynamic curriculum vitae, keep it updated and have as much on there. And the fun or good thing about LinkedIn is actually it will walk you through it. So if you haven't done much with it, do just log back in again and go through it. It'll say, you don't have this, you don't have that. So add all of your qualifications, put any awards in there, put your most up-to-date publications. If you've been involved in any interesting events, put those up. And you can, of course, reach out to people through LinkedIn. And the other important point is that if people don't know you, they're going to search for you on the internet. So if you don't put this information up, they will put it together without you doing it. So it's great for you to take control and curate it. Now, some of you will be familiar with Researchgate. I like this picture. This is the first one where we can actually see Deirdre's face. So that's great. And I know it seems very superficial, but now I'm like, oh, right, this is who it is. And this one, I think is, you can tell us, Deirdre, yourself, have you done anything with Researchgate?
No.
So Researchgate actually just scrapes things off the internet and puts them in there, but you can create your own account. And I would recommend doing so, especially when you're getting out your first publications. Also, you're allowed to share, if you're an author on a publication, you are allowed to share those publications outside of the paywall. And that can be a way of you networking with people who are interested in your research. So do consider going into Researchgate, and as Leigh said, use that same picture that you're using in all of your branding and put it in there so that you're found that way. Twitter, no, Deirdre doesn't have a Twitter handle. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but she might find if she were to go on Twitter that there's actually quite an interesting community of people working in the same field who would be interested to know what Deirdre would like to share. And it's a great place to find papers, and it's a great way to showcase what you're doing and what you're interested in. Again, I'd say the caveat is there that I wouldn't use it for personal things. This is public information and anyone can find it, and it will stay up there unless you delete it. And I'm sure we've all heard about some of the Twitter storms that can go off. So I've used it not particularly for promoting my own work, but I find it a really great way of keeping tabs on the academics, and particularly I'm interested in infectious diseases and public health. So I follow the people that tweet regularly on that, and I follow the agencies I'm interested in, other math institutions, and it's a really good way of finding out what's going on. So I would recommend, even if you're not going to build a big profile, so we've got the next generation. This is the next generation group that this is the part of, and this is the group just for them. Then we have one for Fields, the Math Task Force one, and then I have my own personal one. But I'm now conscious of the fact that if I do speak, people are going to look at my profile, and if I've been raging about public education, or I've been raging about nursing pay, it may distract from the fact that I was involved in something else I'm trying to promote. So just being mindful of keeping your Twitter account a bit more professional. So this is one that Kirsten, who's on the call, was recommending. I'll give all these links afterwards, but she's a scientist and she has a really good profile on Twitter and is a really good communicator. See, okay, now I love this picture, Deirdre. This is a great one of you, and I think if you want to use one for all of yours, this is the one I would use. So Career and Innovation Hub, and we've got a really great bio here as well, and maybe other people in the group can tell that one more, but this is another place where people have themselves. Wikipedia, fantastic list of women in mathematics. one or two of the ones I know, I think Deirdre could be on here. We've actually spoken about this previously, and I do think that Deirdre should have a Wikipedia page. And we've talked at Fields about whether we're going to have a sort of like a telethon, I don't know what you call it, where we're going to go and find all of our prominent mathematicians that we think should have Wikipedia pages and get them up there. Because again, it's a really great way to share what you're working on. This woman, I have a lot of respect for. She is, I think she's in her 20s, just done her PhD in the UK called Jess Wade, and she has been amazing at getting women up on Wikipedia and just helping address the balance. So I think every time she gets trolled by anyone, she posts like more people up there. But there are other people who are working really hard to try and get more of a balance on Wikipedia for scientists and mathematicians. Here we have Deirdre on YouTube. So Deirdre could actually have her own YouTube channel. So you could look her up and she could have any videos that she's done. This was a nice piece that we did at Fields with Jordana, interviewing Deirdre and her sister about growing up in a household that supported the pursuit of mathematics and how that impacted or supported them in their careers. So Deirdre could have a YouTube channel, and I'm sure there's going to be more and more digital content that she's involved in. So that might be a good way for her to do that. Some of you might be familiar with the Mathematics Genealogy Project. And here we can see we've got Deirdre and we've got her advisor, what her dissertation was on, and the students that she supervised here now. Are they all now PhDs, Deirdre? Yeah. So this is somewhere else. Even if you don't have a profile, you might have had one created for you. And you'll see here there's an update form where you can update that. American Mathematical Society. Well, of course, Deirdre would have to be a member of that because she is an American mathematician. We're talking about America broadly here. So I'm not really sure how this works, but I feel like there's an edit author profile piece here, and I think Deirdre could probably put some more things up there. And I've got a few more links, which I'll share with the rest of the group. This is a piece on how to build your personal brand. We have, let's see, that was Deirdre's, that was her biography. This is one of the scientists we work with who just has this great picture. So I wanted to show you, some people got some really fantastic pictures of them in their labs or by a blackboard with some cool math going on behind them. So that's another way of just making your profile or your branding pictures a bit more interesting. If you find yourself somewhere that reflects your personality or what you do, then that's a great place to put yourself up, which leads me nicely on. We've got 10 minutes left to introduce you to Pamela Britton. So Pamela actually does have her own website, and that's a great idea because it means that if you don't like the content that has sort of been put out there, put it out for yourself, make your own website, and then you can take that with you wherever you go. So if you're not going to be at McMaster forever or Fields or wherever else, if you have your own website, you can share your own content, and that's definitely worth doing. So Pam is let me just read out her bio here as well. So Pam is an academic coordinator here at Fields for kindergarten to 12 program. She specializes in mathematics, education and outreach, and has a PhD in education, a master's in mathematics for teachers, and is a certified teacher in Ontario. And she spent the last 20 years presenting to a wide range of participants on a variety of topics. And over the past few years has done significant work in the online environment, including teaching graduate level courses, presenting at national conferences, and even formally defending her thesis from her living room. So it'll be great to welcome Pamela, and she's going to tell us some top tips on how to present. And I'm hoping she's still here. Oh, she's there. You are. Hello.
Perfect. Thanks,
Okay.
Sarah. Yeah, there's nothing more nerve-wracking than trying to do a thesis defense and like keeping your cat off your lap, and it was terrifying. So today I just wanted to give a couple of basically just some tips and whatnot from kind of my experiences and whatnot with presenting online. So we all kind of, we start off with, if we're thinking about an online presentation, we've brushed our hair, we've done the quick camera check to make sure there's, nothing stuck in our teeth. But kind of, where do we go from there with it? So these are just kind of some of the best practices that I've come across and I've found. And of course, there's lots of different things out there, especially when talking about like putting PowerPoint presentations together and that. But these are just kind of some of the tips and tricks that I've come across. So the very first one is always arrive early. If you're presenting, you want to make sure that you're there 10, 15 minutes early. Arrange it with the organizers if you need to, if they haven't invited you early. This is to make sure everything kind of works. Your sound works, your video works, your presentation is showing. Because it can be really hard if there's a technical issue right off the bat, or if you're rushing to get to the presentation and get started, or if you did what I did today and forgot to register, so you didn't have the Zoom link. It can start off your presentation you're already in kind of an agitated state. So if you can arrive early and basically make sure everything's okay, it gives you a chance to kind of take a breath before you even start. The next thing you want to look at is removing distractions, as many as you reasonably can. As Sarah mentioned, we're all used to, people working from home, kids or dog barks or those types of things. People are very forgiving with that. But if you can, and you have the ability to kind of send, people or pets or children or whatnot into another room or, out of the house, even if possible, it does make a difference because, it can also make it less distracting for you because there's always kind of this, my kids are listening to me talk about this right now, or, those types of things. So if you can remove distractions, it also helps you to really focus on what you're saying. The other big thing I would say is put your phone away. Don't have your phone sitting out in front of you, because if somebody texts you, if somebody calls, even if it's on vibrate, it's going to be picked up by your microphone, or the participants may be able to hear it, and B, it's going to distract you. It's going to pull your attention away and away from the message that you're trying to relay. And it could be really hard to get back on track. Most devices do have a do not disturb mode. One of the exceptions to that is you may want to give the organizers your contact information. There are ways to bypass do not disturb. Sometimes if you call 3 times in a row, or you can actually put people on a do not disturb bypass list. So if the organizers do need to reach you, you've dropped your signal off, you're, literally presenting into the void and nobody's there, they have a way to get in touch with you. But in general, you want to make sure that your phone's not going off, and that you're not dealing with kind of those distractions while you're trying to present as well. Your overall look. I really enjoyed Leah's presentation there, because a lot of the same principles apply. You want to do things like make sure that you're lit properly. I actually have beautiful sunlight coming from my left-hand side, and I have nothing on my right. So if I actually turn my light off, half my face is blanked out. So I have a simple ring light that allows me to kind of make sure the look is right. So a lot of the same principles that you would use for your headshots, you would use for presenting. My laptop's elevated and the camera's actually aimed down a little bit so that I can see it a bit better. Speaking of those types of things, backgrounds and camera angles, you want to make sure that people can see you properly, and also that your background is not distracting from what's going on. Virtual backgrounds can be really good. However, if you can do a non-virtual background or a virtual background with a green screen. I actually have a green screen behind me, which means I can do things like move my hand and it doesn't disappear into my background. But even the cardboard, you can actually make a green screen out of cardboard. You just have to make sure that they're all the same color. The one big thing with green screens with virtual backgrounds is you want to make sure that they do not move. So you don't want motion backgrounds. You also want to make sure that your background is appropriate. So as Sarah mentioned, she's got the Math for Public Health. I've got the nice Fields logo behind me. You don't want, as cute as it may seem, you don't want little bunnies or pictures of your kids, or another one that I've seen a lot is images of like grass or nature where you look about the size of an ant. So you want to be conscious of how do you look with a virtual background behind you. The best actually is if you can find an area in your house where you have a blank wall behind you, or something actually like Deirdre has, with, you know, a nice bookshelf or a simple kind of background. Same as with your headshot photos. You want the focus to be on you, not on what's behind you. You want people to be listening that way. Same thing with lighting. As I mentioned, I have a light that lights me up on the other side. Big thing you want to make sure is you're not backlit. If you're backlit, it makes it very difficult to see your face. And it makes it very difficult for people to actually read your facial expressions while you're presenting. Zoom also has an adjust for low light setting that you can set. So if your space is dark, Zoom can actually do a bit of an adjustment. It also has a touch up my appearance, which actually does brighten you and can lighten and make it easier for people to see you as well. Another very, very important thing when you're presenting is being heard. Be careful with things. Right now, I'm wearing a corded microphone, and I made sure that it is pulled away from what I'm wearing, because if I was wearing a large necklace, or if it was sitting directly on my clothing, you're not going to hear me, you're going to hear rubbing and other sound effects, basically. So if you do have the opportunity to use a microphone, just make sure that it is clear from anything. Also, if you're wearing any form of jewelry, like a brooch or something, make sure your microphone's not hitting it. Or if you're wearing bracelets or rings or whatnot, you want to make sure that they're not jangling or hitting each other, because microphones will pick it up, and it does make it harder to hear kind of what you're saying as well. Screen sharing tips. A couple of big ones when we look at screen sharing is the big thing is share only what you absolutely need to. If you're sharing a browser window, pull it out from other tabs. Be conscious of the fact that when you share a browser window, we can see every tab you have open. And you may not want us to see every tab you have open, depending on what your browser history looks like. So pull out just what you're looking for. Now, Sarah actually had a window open where she had multiple tabs, but there was a purpose for each of them. She was going through each of those tabs. I also, unless you absolutely need to, I highly recommend not sharing your entire desktop. This is for a couple of reasons. One, you've probably got files on your desktop that you don't necessarily want people to see. Also, you will also be able to see the background of your desktop. And a lot of people, I have a very neutral desktop, but a lot of people have, pictures of their kids or their dogs, or again, kind of cute bunny pictures. So when you're doing a professional presentation, just show what you need to. If you are doing a PowerPoint presentation, if you have two screens, presentation mode works really nicely. One screen can be your presentation, the other one can be your presenter notes. That's actually the setup that I have. If you don't have that, I'm just going to exit out of this for a second. So this one actually dumped me out. There we go. In PowerPoint, under the presentations, you can go to, setup slideshow, and it will give you the options actually, can you see the setup show options?
Mhm.
Okay, so it will give you this one, browsed in an individual window, which allows you to basically share just the window, and you can still have access to everything else, the chat, participants, you can see people still, you can have access to your notes. So that's a very kind of handy one to basically allow as well. You can also, whenever you're presenting, if I always like to say, make sure that you can keep the chat window open, because then you can see messages from people, either organizers 2-minute warnings, or people saying, I can't hear you. I once taught a class where I couldn't hear them talking to me and they couldn't hear. So the only way I knew there was an issue was through the chat. Another big important one, and this is when you're also participating in presentation or in presentations, like just listening, you want to make sure that you're facing your camera. This is especially important if you do have 2 screens, that you want to make sure you're not spending your entire presentation talking to your other screen and looking and reading your PowerPoint presentation when your entire audience is over on this side. So you can either have, if you have 2 screens, you can have your notes open. Another neat trick is actually to put your notes at the top of your screen, because then you're actually looking much more closely at the camera than kind of looking down at the bottom of your screen. I also find it nice every once in a while if people do have their cameras on, which is really nice. I can actually see people right now. I can actually, if I need a reminder that I'm not just talking into the void, I can look over and actually see other people. So that's actually one of the final notes that I have is, remember that presenting online's very different from presenting in person. When you're in person, you're not necessarily reading off of a script. You may have a couple handwritten notes. Typically also your PowerPoint presentation is behind you. When you're presenting in person, you're not necessarily looking at it. Also, when you're presenting in person, you can see your entire audience. It can feel really scary sometimes if everybody has their video off, which happens a lot, because you think you're just kind of talking into a void. And if you are reading from a script, you can also talk a lot faster than you mean to. So the biggest thing I can just say for that is take a breath. Remember that you are presenting to human beings. Sometimes if everybody has their video off, you can even just look at your own image, just to remind yourself that you are there and there is, there's at least one person. If you are self-conscious about that though, you can turn self-view off. So if you find yourself kind of just staring at your own video, or, you keep constantly, oh, my hair's like, I've got a flyaway hair, and you keep fixing it, you can turn self-view off, so that it becomes more real, like you're just presenting. But the biggest thing is saying,
sorry, Pamela,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. It's 5 past, and this is a 1-hour session. So before people start dropping off, because I think I'm sorry to cut you off. So apologies. That was fantastic. And I'm sorry I only gave you 10 minutes. So to wrap up, so that was really tough. But I just wanted to remind or ask everyone, like, please go away this week. Do some work on your profile, get a good biography up there. If you've got recent publications, make sure they're up. I think it's a great idea to have the same photo. I'd love it if you would come back on the 10th and we can break out into groups and just review our work and see what our profiles look like. I hope you've gained some insight into this. I do think we need to make the most of this space now. This is the future. It's not going to go, they're not going to suddenly go, wow, we can, we've managed to do, I think in mathematics, public health, we've probably done something like 60 online events for very small amount of money. It's actually been an amazing format for us to share the work that we're doing and to build networks and but we're not doing it in person. And we used to spend so much money on travel and coffee and snacks that we could only really run 1 or 2 events a year. And maybe they were great because you got to meet people, or maybe you weren't putting your best face forward in those. So now we have opportunity after opportunity. If you're in a meeting, put your camera on, engage, ask questions, and make a good brand for yourself. So hopefully we'll see you all on the 10th. Thank you so much, everyone who turned up. And I will send, what we'll do is we'll put up all of the links on the registration page where this event was. You can find it in fields. If you go to the Mathematics for Public Health page and go to the Next Generation seminar series, you'll find it. So thanks everyone. And yeah, thanks for coming. And thank you so much to our presenters. Thank you, Leigh. Thank you, Pamela. And special thanks to Deirdre for letting us go over her profile. That was very generous of her.
Nice meeting you all.